Okay, Shabbat Shalom to all of you. Uh, Today we read the portion of Vayikra. I entitled the message, I want to be close to you, my God. First, I'm going to start to read some Tehillims and some scriptures. Okay, it says, happy is he whom you choose and whom you bring near to dwell in your courts. That is in Tehillim 65, verse 5. The Lord is near to all call upon him, and to all call upon him in truth. That is written in Tehillim 145, verse 18. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. That was written by Jacob, verse 8, chapter 4. But for me, it is good to be near God. That is written in Tehillim 73, verse 28. As I read this week's passage, a crucial question came to my mind. Why draw near to God? What good does it do to me? Does there have to be a special reason? We have some dogs at home. We are their owners. And if there's one thing I've learned from these dogs is that dogs don't need a specific reason to be with their owners. They are there because they are simply happy to be there. That's why Adam Harishon, the first man, aptly named these little animals Caleb from the heart. As I wrote this message, I remember a song by Michael W. Smith who composed a song for God which says, Draw me to you, draw me near to you, for you are all I need, all I ever needed. Help me to know that you are near. I don't know in what context he wrote the song, but it made me think about my relationship with the Eternal One. And it was a prayer that is very connected to this week's portion. In the same way that I tend to forget that God wants me to get closer to Him, I overlook the fact that He wants to be close to me. In this portion, it begins with the following verse: Vayikra el Moshe Vayadaber Adonai. And the Eternal called Moses, and the Eternal spoke to him. How does the book of Shemot end? It ends by indicating that God entering in his secret place, his dwelling place, his tent, his place of intimacy. However, it is not seen, it is only perceived. From this place, some sages say that he makes a loving call to Moses, telling him, Moses, do you want to come? It is a type of call that the text refers to. Sometimes they call us to scold us, or other times to give instructions, others to inform, but sometimes it's to be intimate, to open our hearts. He then begins to explain in a very strange way. And here I am paraphrasing Moses, what strategy can I use to get the people to come to me? Remember in Shemot 2016, the people say to Moses, You speak to us, and we will listen, but do not let God speak to us, lest we die. And in verse 18 indicates, And the people stood at a distance. It was clear that Israel did not fear the eternal in the sense of revering, but rather they were afraid of him. Here is not a characteristic of God. After murdering Abel, Cain fled out of fear. Jacob left Israel for Haran out of fear. Moses murdered an Egyptian out of fear. And Lot's daughter practiced incest out of fear. In other words, a relationship based on fear becomes unhealthy, toxic relationship. God desires to maintain a healthy relationship, which is why he establishes himself at the center of the camp, dwelling among them, as Shemot 25, verse 8 mentions. His intention was clear. God wanted to be the center of their daily lives. He wanted to have a place in their hearts and minds and maintain a continuous contact with them. However, a very high barrier stood between them and God, which is fear. I remember that when I wanted to win my wife's heart, I tried different strategies to get her attention, to establish a relationship, and above all, to have her love returned. In the same way, God wanted to create a scenario that no matter what people's current condition was, they will have an excuse to approach to Him. This will break the paradigms that had existed until then in those societies. The first paradigm that existed was that God was exclusively for the priestly caste, not only for the common people. All societies, without exception, had classes to make up royalty, the wealthy, the military, the religious, and the bottom of where the people, and they were completely ignored. There existed a separation between the gods and themselves. They could only establish a distant relationship with these gods through their religious practices and sacrifices. So the fact that God's dwelling place would be at the center of them was not a small feat. The second paradigm was the idea that the deities lived in a large, colossal, fixed temple with a touchless works of architecture and engineering, serving as a point of connection between earth and divinity. He will reveal that the most powerful God of all existence desired to live into a tent. It was not in a stationary temple. Can you imagine? Our gods had temples far more magnificent than the simple Mishkan. It was also not a small feat. The goal was a movable and transportable temple because wherever Israel was, God would be at their center. It was also innovative. Furthermore, God's message was clear: all the earth is mine. In the third paradigm, God decided that there should be a korbanot and no sevachim. That is a rapprochement and not sacrifices. In the ancient world, the shedding of blood was seen as a desire of God, and these gods showed no mercy or love. Rather, they demanded blind obedience. In the case of disobedience, there was no room for mercy, only punishment, so that the priest described his anger was satisfied when someone paid for the penitent's sin. However, this one God made it clear and that he did not desire sacrifice or bloodshed. He asked that the people draw near to him, as we see in Tehillim 51, verse 16, or in Hosea 6 6. So why we draw near to God? Well, as we read, there are several reasons. First, the korbanot, which depict drawing near, were voluntary, not obligatory. Second, they could be offered by any soul, regardless of race, sex, or social status. Anyone who wished to draw near the eternal. Regarding the specific reason described in this portion, they teach us that there was no specific reason for the Olah and the Mincha. They were simply that they wanted to please God. We wanted to be close to Him. We wanted to recognize His majesty or contemplate His beauty. Second, it teaches about the Bikurim, the offering of the first fruits. It was an offering of honor, thanking God for their sustenance. Third, there were the Shalamim. These were offerings of social communion, in which families made God a part of their lives and ate together before the eternal. They are peace offerings. How important peace is in our homes today. There were often offerings of thanksgiving for some blessing of fulfillment of a promise. Fourth, Tahata, offering were to cover sins committed, for which the offerer realized they made a mistake and needed God's forgiveness, his covering. The point is that we feel bad for having committed a wrong act in our life. We are ashamed and feel that we are lack of the faith to stand before the eternal. Then God removes our shame by covering our mistake, hiding it so that it's not longer exposed to everyone else. Fifth, the sham. The offering for mistakes committed conscientiously, especially in a direct offense to the eternal, breaking his commandment, provoking guilt. In other cases, guilt remains because we are not sure whether we erred or not. Notice that guilt is not the same as shame. Guilt is a constant accusation that we are responsible for our wrongdoing, prevent us from raising our head. Shame, on the other hand, is a temporary raising during similar situations, whether by one's own action or those of others remind us of our wrongdoing. They usually go hand by in a hand. According to expert Dr. Palomares, when we feel shame, our natural instinct is to hide as if we are shrinking emotionally, while the environment and the people around us seem to expand in size and importance. It manifests itself through blushing, avoiding eye contact, nervousness, empowering heart rates, and generates personal unworthiness as if we were inadequate or insufficient. She continues. Guilt, on the other hand, is more introspective and morally charged emotion. It arises when we perceive ourselves responsible for a mistake or a harm caused. It generates moral conscience, self criticism with an exaggerated level of severity, and can generate anxiety and persistent discomfort. The offering had an integrating component because they could be presented by anyone from the richest to the poorest. So the idea of the bloody god or one who delights in gold in blood no longer existed, or in gold. As grain offerings or inexpensive as easily accessible birds such as doves were also presented. The goal then was to draw near to God for the soul who decides to draw near to Him. Returning to the beginning, we must draw near to Him with sincerity, just as we are, not pretending to be different or perfect, with guilt or shame, with joy or sadness, with happiness or discomfort. When we present ourselves to Him, the law of action reaction is in operation. As we draw near to Him, He draws near to us. When I think about it, I truly come to the conclusion that in the end he chooses us to be close to him, even though it seems that we are no near to him, and that being close to him is our is for our ultimate good. There is no other place or time more important. In that lies true shalom. Amidst so noise about wars today, the affliction of trade disputes, and the new world order finding shalom is vital. My prayer is that my prayer is that we may have a constant need to dwell in his house, to be close to God, because that's where we want to be. There's no specific need, just a desire to be close to him. He continually seeks him to find true Shabbat Shalom.